If you are a woman who is unfortunately still dealing with long COVID, months after you got sick, maybe even years, and you're wondering how long is this supposed to last, you are not alone. I went through that. I had almost 8 months of being bedridden and almost 2.5 years of recovery. Let's break down what the research actually says about recovery time for most women and why it can often take longer. On average, women who were not hospitalized with COVID experienced long COVID symptoms for about 4 months. That's based on multiple population level studies. However, we also know how underrepresented women can be in scientific research. That being said, we're just going to talk about the research that is out there for now. Now, for women who were hospitalized, the average jumps to around 9 months. And in both cases, that's just the average, right? There's always going to be outliers. There are plenty of women who are still dealing with symptoms well beyond a year out. And the most common symptoms that tend to stick around include things like fatigue, insomnia, brain fog, shortness of breath, dizziness, mood swings, things like joint pain, sensory changes. Maybe you have really strong sensitivity to light and sound. And some of these can show up alone, right? You might just have one or two. But other women can have a really big cluster of symptoms. And if you're still dealing with them several months in, you are right in the middle of what is being reported across the board. You are not at all alone. So why does it seem like women are more affected? Why does it seem like women stay sick for longer periods of time when it comes to long COVID? And there are a few reasons researchers are looking at. Firstly, hormones, right? Estrogen and progesterone interact with the immune system. And in some cases, that means it leads to a longer inflammatory response. For me, it triggered an autoimmune disease. And then you have the fact that women's immune systems are on average more reactive, more sensitive. And that's wonderful for fighting off infections in the short term, but it can also mean long term, you have a lot of lingering effects. There's also a theory that men may be underreporting symptoms more than women, which might make it seem like women are more affected, so it can possibly be skewed. And let's not ignore the social side of this too. There are so many women who are caregivers, and they have to push through because they have no choice, whether it's jobs, whether it's their partner, whether it's kids, other responsibilities that they have, and they're not resting or recovering the way that their body needs when they have COVID. You're not necessarily more fragile, you are likely under-supported, and your system may be under stress long after that initial infection. So let's talk about timelines for a minute. I know we touched on it briefly, but I want to go into a little more detail. So what's normal? When should you think about seeking more help? What does it look like? For the first 3 months after infection, lingering symptoms are pretty common. And then between months 4 to 6, a lot of women start to see slow improvements, but still improvements nonetheless, right? But that's not everyone. And if you're still really deep in fatigue or in brain fog at that point, it's still within range. Then by 9 months, some people are back to baseline. There's a sizable group, especially women, who are still living with symptoms even a year out, a year after COVID. So if you are beyond 6 months and you're not seeing improvement, or if your symptoms are actually getting worse, it's a good time to check in with a provider who understands post-viral conditions, someone who looks at the whole picture, a holistic perspective, not just isolated symptoms. You can check out our website and the links below. What can you do while your body is still in the slow recovery mode? Okay, firstly, pacing matters. I have a feeling that a lot of people, myself included when I was bedridden, hate to hear pacing matters, but it really does. And I'm not saying pacing fixes everything, because it does not. However, it does matter. It does give your body time to really heal. So we don't want to wait until we are exhausted to rest. We want to build breaks into our day, even if we feel okay. So maybe you had a relatively normal day where, you were out of bed, you were able to do some things around the house, maybe you can work from home, etc., etc. When you build some breaks into that kind of day, maybe you took a short walk after lunch, maybe you took a short nap during your lunch break. I don't know, whatever it's going to look like for you, you're less likely to crash in the next 48 hours. So we want to support the nervous system in small ways every single day. That could be breath work, it could be quiet time, like I mentioned, it could be walks, even lying down in a dark room for a few minutes just to close your eyes and get a break from the day. All of these things help to shift your nervous system out of that survival mode, that fight or flight, into that parasympathetic rest and digest, where it actually heals, because it can't heal over here in survival mode, unfortunately. We also want to eat well when we can, right? Nutrient dense meals, anti-inflammatory foods. We want to focus on stabilizing blood sugar, one of the most important things you can do with nervous system dysregulation with long COVID. Stabilize your blood sugar. We also want to make sure that we eat enough proteins. I always recommend to my patients at least 100 grams of protein minimum per day. All of these things are going to help reduce inflammation and help to keep your energy more stable throughout the day, so you're not having those highs and lows. It's going to help to prevent those crashes during the day. We also want to pay attention to patterns, right? So track your symptoms. Maybe you want to put it in your phone on an app. Maybe you want to actually handwrite it into a journal. Some women start to notice flare-ups tied to their menstrual cycle. There are reasons for that. You can also notice that you have flare-ups when your sleep is suffering, when you're more stressed, whether it's chemical, physical, or mental stressors. Maybe diet is playing a role into it. All of these will become more they'll start to come to light when you start tracking everything that's going on. And that information, knowing that, helps you adjust in small but very, very impactful and very meaningful ways. It is okay to ask for help. You are not meant to push through this alone. I unfortunately went through it was from March until October or November before I started seeing someone. That was a struggle. It was a huge struggle, and I really don't want anyone to ever have to go through that the way that I did, because I truly thought that my life was ending. I really, really hope that this information helps you guys. I hope it helped you to feel more grounded, or at the very least, I hope that it has helped you feel less alone on your journey. And I would absolutely love for you to subscribe, to comment, to like, and to share this with someone else you know that is going through it, whether it's long COVID, whether it's an autoimmune disease that they're suffering with, chronic fatigue syndrome, any kind of chronic illness that is impacting their life. And if you do want support for your nervous system during recovery, we have linked down below an SRI quiz that helps you to tell how dysregulated your nervous system is. It's going to classify you. It'll grade you on your nervous system dysregulation. And then it takes you to another page where you can see different tips and tricks, ways to regulate your nervous system based on your results. You're not behind. You are absolutely healing in your own timeline, and that still counts. You're doing beautifully well. We'll see you in the next video.